right, so today we are playing with, well, a pretty nasty chain. I'm still debating, you know what I mean? I just cannot make up my mind. So today I decided, you know, we are going to be cutting 8x8 wood with this saw at the races, and I decided to go ahead and let's knock her down to a shorter bar. It'll be a lot easier to control, you know. So I went ahead and did that, and I started working on the chain. Put a square file on it, square hand file. But then I did some other additional work to it. So the additional work I did is just to help it with chips, to get the chips, keep the chips out of the way of the tooth as it's cut. We're gonna make some cuts on it, you know. We're gonna have to probably dive into this more. So I actually just made these cuts, and I'm still on the fence on whether or not I should be going this hungry with the chain. The saw, I feel, needs more torque, and I think a saw with more torque would outpull this saw. Probably cut faster, I should say. It was built more for the higher RPM situation, and now that I have this chain on it, I'm really robbing torque. And I feel like the chain might be making it slower because it's just pulling so hard on the saw. I think I'm gonna have to resharpen it and not sharpen it so hungry. You know what I mean? But here, let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So there she is. Did a little extra work to it, as you can see. I found that, you know, I sharpened that up pretty much the same as I do my other ones. And as soon as I did that, it made a huge difference. So I'm guessing it's really doing a good job of keeping the chips away from the cutter. The problem is, now the saw's got to work harder for it. So I'm wondering if I'm just making my teeth too aggressive. Yes, I am. I really got those teeth aggressive, and I'm wondering if I should try to lay them back a little. You know what I mean? She looks pretty hungry, don't she? But yeah, I think we're gonna make some cuts here. I'll show you these cuts, and you'll get to see. The only time I can keep the RPM up is whenever I'm holding or pulling the saw back. Otherwise, it just really pulls itself into the wood really hard. Well, this is the point of making square chain feel kind of chattery. So there you go. This is kind of what it's like right here. So let's watch these cuts. All right, so we are going to do a little voiceover here for you. We are going to compare the old way I sharpened it to this new technique I did. It is an extremely hungry chain, and it really robs a lot of torque out of the saw. We want to see, which way's faster. So that's what this is all about. So what you're seeing here is we're going to throw them up side by side. You got the one on the left is the new way, the one on the right is the old way. And you can see that it is definitely cutting faster, even though it is pulling down a lot of the RPM. She's really, really soaking up a lot of the torque of the saw. So remember when we built the saw, I said I was going to put it at a 40,000th squish, and I was afraid that might rob some of the torque that's available. I think that's what we're seeing here is that the torque just isn't quite enough to pull this really hungry chain through the wood the way I would like it to. So let's watch this again. I think the cookie is actually going to hit the ground and possibly stop moving before the right side is finished. Let's see here. It does look like it's decent amount faster. Let's watch what happens here. The cookie hits the ground and falls over and stops moving before the right side is finished. Now this piece of wood, I think I measured it at just over 10 inches. So for us to see this kind of a result in 10 inches of wood, she's a pretty quick chain. So this is the second cut. And you can see how much of a head start I gave the saw. I just kind of letting it play through, but you can kind of see how much of a head start it has before the left side starts. Let's see how this one finishes. It does look like it's going to go ahead and win the race here, isn't it? Yep, it's going to finish. Yep, there goes the cookie. She hits the ground, and boom, there we go. Definitely a faster chain. She just really takes a lot of torque. So this is kind of one of those things that we're looking at here as to the future plans of this saw. So I like the way the port timing is. The port timing is really helping the saw stretch out high into the RPM. It's just falling a little short on the torque. So I think whenever we go back to this saw for next season, again, we're going to run the saw like this for this season, but I think for next season, we're going to do some changes to help with the torque and kind of leave all the port timing the way it is, I think. It really does a good job at stretching out into the RPM. We just got to get that torque up. And I think bumping that squish number down a bit and probably building a separate head and making a smaller combustion chamber and everything, that should really help bring the torque of the saw up and make this thing cut even faster yet. You know what I mean? I don't know if we're going to need to do the crankshaft modifications, turn it into a full circle crank. It doesn't seem to be at that level yet, but if I did a full circle crank, I could definitely try to squeeze more RPM out of it, you know what I mean? I think we'll start with a head though, and work it, squeezing more torque out of it. Just look at how much faster it is cutting. Here in a minute, I think we're going to bring the volume back in on the cutting so that you can kind of hear the RPM of each one, and we're going to probably end the video with this here. So you'll get to hear the RPM of the one on the left, which is faster, even though it's running less RPM, versus the RPM of the one on the right. And we'll end it with this. Alrighty? All right, I just want to add something real quick to this video. So we are obviously at the point now that we're ready to start converting it to run on nitro. So we're going to run with nitropropane additive. There's also nitromethane, but I'm going to start out with nitropropane. So the goal here on the next one is to see how rich we can get this thing to run, because we need it to run rich before we go to nitropropane. And the nitropropane should add more power. But the trick with nitropropane is that it doesn't benefit you as much at lower RPM as it does at higher RPM. So if you're running at low RPM, it doesn't really help you much, if at all. But if you're running at higher RPMs, it does. So the goal on the next step of this saw here is to get it running on the nitropropane and, see what we can get out of it. But we're going to wait until closer to the races to do that. We're going to keep it as is until a little closer, and then we'll get her switched over to run with methanol, nitropropane before the races. Nitromethane is a possibility in the future, but we're not going to adventure that just yet. Alrighty. I'm still new at this square thing, so, I got a lot to learn. Alrighty, so we'll catch you in the next one. Later.